The decisions we make matter at all times. Yet, worrying about the decisions we make or worrying about not making decisions is not healthy. And what I mean by not healthy is a lot of what you predict within you or in the external, like what you sort of like imagine that can lead into a thing or the other, is actually just a byproduct. In reality, things are just as they are at all times. But how can one free itself? But how can one free itself from addiction to form? That's the big dilemma that humanity's been living for so long, because addiction can also be the root of suffering, and the idea of not thinking for some people can be terrifying, because without their thoughts, without their thinking, they wouldn't have arrived so far in life. So in reality, thinking excessively about things can lead into the two sides of the coin. Excessive amount of bliss for some people, or at least they call it bliss because they've never tried anything else other than thinking, far beyond from experiencing a different state within themselves, because they've cultivated the state they're living for so long, and they're pretty much conformed with form to a degree where they really don't need to experience anything else other than what they have. And that's the thing about life, about duality, right? In some cases, one thing is so good for one, and it can be so bad for another person. And when these two people come together and they realize what is bad for them in another person, and the other person realizes the good in themselves, even though they've never tried, they're just kind of like curious about that thing, although they're far, far away from this place. And that's not a bad thing, because everyone is in a different journey. It's in a different state of, like I said, existence, of awareness, of their own emotional intelligence. And what true love really asks for us, really asks from us, is to just accept. Or not even accept, but not even have to think that you have to accept. Because the moment you think that you have to accept, you're already acknowledging that you're not accepting something. Or you can simply acknowledge that you're resisting accepting something and fully be immersed and okay with that. I would say praying for yourself to be in acceptance with it. Acknowledging perhaps the aspect of you that is in resistance to it and is in opposition to it, and purifying that aspect of you. That can possibly help. But just accept, because when you accept, then things are much clearer. The sun rises and shines again. And when there's sun and the sun's shining, there's clarity. And that's all we need when we're making decisions. Typically, you make decisions, you choose to make decisions at a place when you cannot see. And that's why it feels overwhelming, because you're only like vibrating at that frequency of worrying and choosing, which makes you jump from one thought to the next. And the more you jump into alternatives, more alternatives come up, more thoughts comes up, and in reality, you're not using divine intelligence to see clear what that is. Because there is clarity for everyone. Like if we eliminate all that junk, let's say nothing ever existed. And I like to try this in my own thinking, right? When I have to determine something by that day or that time, I will typically like, yes, I'll come up with scenarios like, oh, what would this aspect of me, this version of me, if they had or if she had this and that, would agree with, would decide for a highest good. And that usually works when I can place myself at that place or come up with that question. Because typically, when I'm just so overwhelmed by ideas and thinking and thoughts, I can't quite come up to that point of like, let me help myself. We know how to help ourselves. But when we are at those fragile times of helplessness, hopelessness, is when it doesn't seem like to have a way out of that suffering, of that agony that you're living. And sometimes there's no really agony. Actually, most of the times there's no agony. But you have already made that with your thinking. Because you've been cultivating it from the beginning, from the time you start in a relationship or in a circumstance, in a scenario, an event, a transaction, anything, you start planting on those seeds of beliefs of what you think about the situation is, and you start feeling different things, and you don't have time sometimes to process your feelings and your thinking, and everything happens so fast, and the other person also doesn't understand quite well what that is. So this is just the two people, as two persons together, sort of like coping with, praying in their own way. Each is praying for his own thing. Obviously, the universe listens to everyone. So if you are praying in one circumstance, the other person is praying also for the same circumstance, know there will be an outcome generated for both parties. Ask and you shall receive. Why do you think the universe would only listen to you and not to the other person? Well, you may say, well, my faith was stronger than the other person. My pain was bigger than the other person. It doesn't matter. Now, one side, one person might understand the response, because the way how this like receiving works, very particular. Like when you say ask and shall receive, don't expect things to simply fall out of the sky and everything just change for you. But it happens like slowly, gradually, like, through signs, synchronicities, messages, like your own flow is altered. And I've talked about creative flow before. I talked about how, you can do different things to alter your flow for the better. In other ways, you can always change the way how you feel, especially when you tap into different practices and you commit to the process. But if one person understands the receiving and is taking action and is fully aware, obviously the outcome is going to be better for the person who's listening, right? Or for whoever takes action first. And when two people are fully decided that they cannot make something work, or if one party only does not want to make it work, then no, there's no way out for both of these entities in a conflictual relationship or in a relationship that is like going through conflict. But if one person really wants it and he has the tools and the knowing to make this work, by faith, they can change the situation and they can improve the relationship for the better. Obviously, there needs to be, like, some benefits, obviously, to this person as well, to have this motivation even to persist into something, right? And your motivation is only you know which one are your motivations versus like motivations that are not worth it keeping in your heart. And that's why I like to keep myself in sometimes more than out. And it doesn't mean I'm thinking, it doesn't mean I'm in my head. It just means that I'm noticing a lot of how I'm feeling, because I understand that if I'm feeling drained, fucked up, exhausted, I cannot function. So the only thing I can do is basically tuning in to that frequency and see how it changes from time to time in order to improve it. So my outcomes in the external or with my for the best. Isn't what we want? We want the best at all times. To ourselves, to others, to life, to the collective. So this thing about making decisions, what you want to look at, so this thing about making decisions, what you want to look at is what are the questions you are asking yourself that are leading to the answers that you have. Because the thoughts that keep kind of flowing on your psychic are based on mostly. So what you want to look at when you're making decisions is like, what are the questions I've been asking myself that are leading to these answers, which are leading to those thoughts, right? It's just like how a lot of conversations go. One person asks one question: where are you from? Why are you here? How did you get here? Where did you hear about this thing at first? Why would you do this instead of that? And so forth. So the whys, right? Like, arise, they come up first, and then they're just almost like as the seed, as the foundation of this conversation. Because the rest of this conversation most likely is going to be based on the first why questions that were placed on in the beginning of the conversation. Basically, two people want to understand one another, and for some reason, I don't believe controlling conversation, like forcing the outcome of conversation, works pretty well. And I had concluded that after, like, understanding that when I was not planning on meeting someone or having a conversation, the outcome of this conversation was so much better because there's detachment to it, right? And those of you who are already enrolled on my Unlock Your Creative Flow, / overcoming how to overcome resistance, know what I'm talking about. Detachment is a big player and a very powerful force. At this degree, we can call it force because it can influence things for the better. You know, when you detach from really getting to know someone, it leads you to actually get to know this someone at a deeper level. Because this person, essentially, like whoever you're getting to know, will probably feel more comfortable when they realize that you're just so no interest. That no interest is basically making this other person feel like you are not going to be judging them, that you're not trying to get something from them, and that you are just there for no reason. And what's the problem of being there for no reason? I mean, there are a lot of people who live from that state of no reason. They just are. Life itself is for no reason. But we create the reasons. We love creating the reasons because we use logic, and it is a force that comes from that fearful energy, and it allows us to create more abundance, to create more experiences, to create like work, to create companies, jobs, right? I'm maybe being repetitive, but you understand what I mean. Like that force allows us to create structures, and essentially that combined with power is very powerful. Like the power of your emotions and the power of your logic combining with that amount of control that is basically placed upon things, people, events in order to keep things in place. Like when you maintain something, like something that has already been created, right? You can use force to control that those things are always in place. Or you can also trust and rely on divine power that all these things will always be in order. But control itself is there to really, really ensure the thing is done. Like it's basically someone saying, do it now, versus power, like there will be people there, and they're supposed to do it, and whoever is part of the management of this process can just be on the other side and just like wishing and hoping and praying like, oh, things will work out well, like it's always been working well. We understand we are one. We understand, like, you know, whoever is supposed to do this will do it and will get it right. And that's okay. And that's perfect. We are good, right? Obviously, you can apply this example to all scenarios in life. And I'm just using this example to kind of like help you realize a little bit more on how detachment can be very powerful. When you're creating a song, when you're creating a piece of art, when you try to come up with an idea, anything you're trying to, it's coming from force. It's coming from a lower frequency in that realm of fear. And it's basically putting on this fire of like, I must. Otherwise, I need. Otherwise, I have to, so I can. What does that mean? That means if I don't, then something happens, which then leads to this, which leads to this, which leads to that, which ultimately leads to death. And what the ego fears, what we human beings fear, a lot of the times is death, is ceasing to exist. So we will do as much as we can to avoid death. And when we're doing something on the background, right? Like I said, when you're starting your creative process and you're just coming up with this try, it's basically already placing the resistance in yourself. And you're already coming up with all this baggage in the background, which is basically are these ideas of what can happen if you don't do this. And this energy itself stands on your way of simply expressing who you are. But if you haven't found who you truly are, then maybe this message is not even to you. Because in this case, yes, you can use logic, force, structure. You can ask the right questions that will lead to the right thoughts, and you can structure a whole piece, a whole song, just based on controlling. And a lot of amazing songs came out of that, right? People who had studied, who know how to use their thinking very well. And also some of the most beautiful songs came from a place of what they call inspiration, where Let's say, well, I was just sitting one day and then this thing started playing in my head and I was like, oh, this sounds good. Let me put this together here. Oh, I'll just tweak this and change this chord for this chord because that's going to fit in more to this piece. Boom. They had a song. So that's the place of detachment. The place where they were not waiting, expecting anything. And yeah, something happens. Even when you don't expect something, yet something happens. You know, like when we call like surprise, like some of you love surprises, right? What are surprises? Surprises are something you are not expecting. Something that comes up of nothing. You're like, how did this show up here? How did you come up with this? Like, this is the most exhilarating moment. But if you were expecting this thing, most likely you already ruined the experience itself beforehand because you were already planning in your head. You were imagining, you were feeling, you were thinking, you were so excited about this thing that you ruined the experience before it happened. And that's when the addiction of thinking can play a negative role in life, right? Because maybe you prefer to think about the thing than actually realizing many facts of the thing itself. And that's okay. We're not judging you. I'm just saying that, you know, the experience itself is way much better than the thinking of it. There are no disappointments, expectations. There's just surprise. And you're just like playful and like delighted towards like the experience itself, and you just like finding everything new. You know, like when you go to a place and you find everything new and you had no clue about this thing, and then later on you're just talking about that. You see yourself talking about that over and over. That's because you created an attachment to something you didn't have an attachment before. So a lot of you thinkers, when you don't get a chance to actually think about what's going to happen, when this thing happens and you love this thing so much, or you're just so like excited about how this thing turned to be what it is, you end up bringing that with you when you're thinking about it a lot, right? When you say, oh, I can get someone out of my head, or I can get that situation, that place thing out of my head, that's because, you know, you didn't do enough anticipation, excitement, or like I said, anticipation, right? Like anticipating your thoughts about the situation. And later on, yeah, you were too attached to the thing and you wanted to think about it. So freeing yourself from the addiction of thinking will save your soul. Is the gate to heaven. And you might ask me, and I might ask myself, here, really, how do I stop thinking? How can I get free from my addiction to thinking? Well, maybe the first thing is, I would say you gotta start meditating. And I do already meditate, right? And that helps me a lot to get out of my thinking, but also get into my thinking, or realize how addicted I am to getting back to my thoughts every time awareness moves out of thoughts during the process of meditating. So that's what meditation is. You start noticing the thoughts, you realize you can move out of them, and you find something better in yourself. Sometimes what you find in yourself is not something better, and you're not comfortable enough to feel that thing that is not better, and then you get back to thinking because it's a way for you to distract yourself from that which is your true nature, your true essence, and that is, you can only tap into it by feeling. So for some people, it is better to think than feel because it's less painful, right? And the ego, the human mind, wants to distract itself. It wants to do whatever it takes to protect oneself from suffering, from more pain, especially if someone is like actually traumatized a lot and has gone through quite some trauma because they have like a lot of stored trauma, and obviously feeling themselves is not as easy and simple as it sounds. So what else can I do to free myself from the addiction of thinking? Maybe finding things that are really fun for you to do in your daily lives. And that's when I come to the dilemma of finding who you are, because if you haven't found yourself, because you've been living the life of others for so long, the life of others means like you've been living this life of like service to others, like pleasing others, ensuring your survival, and ensuring your survival maybe for you meant like being in relationships that were not meaningful to you, being at places that were not really a good fit to you, but you only had that option at that time. And because of despair, you had to, as opposed to, you were there. You had to be there as opposed to, you were there. You were able to enjoy the experience of being there. So to be in the present moment and to be in the present moment can help you to free yourself from the addiction of thinking, and yet can lead you to better experiences, especially when you're doing the things that are right to you. And when you haven't found yourself yet in what it is that you're here to do, that can be quite challenging because you have nothing left other than thinking. That's like the only thing you can do to keep going, because you want to keep going. You don't want to die. How do I kill this thing in me? All right. Then you ask the thinker, the door in you that likes to think like, okay, I want to bring you more into existence. How can I apply you more often in 12 hours? Let's say you start your day at 8 a.m. and you go into 10 o'clock. So you have about 14 hours, 12 to 14 hours in the day. How can I apply you better towards the things that are joyful to you? Even that is a dependence itself, because when you feed that aspect of you into doing what it feels pleasing, now that means you have to carry that for the rest of your life. Because when you're not doing something, then that means that part of you is going to be crying, yelling, complaining. That voice will not stop until it gets something pleasing happening, right? And then you say, well, I don't even want you to come up into existence. I don't want to do anything. I'm done. Like, you know what? I've noticed there's nothing to do. And that part of you might say, well, I can just think. How can you get an agreement with this aspect of you? Like, if you can't quite kill that aspect of you, that aspect of you don't want to die. And come on, it represents a part of you. It's you anyways. Like, wait. Can we just put this part somewhere else inside and just make it feel like it's doing something? Oh, wow, that's genius. Yeah, that works out. That works well. Yeah, you know what you're doing from now on is imagining what the best outcome scenario is for the next 5 years of my life. Like, if what you love doing the most right now cannot be manifested, then let's just imagine. Because imagining is a doing as well. It's a combination of being and doing. And as long as it's not taking you out of the present moment, especially if you have to engage in conversations, be with people, like, yeah, why not? But then your doing might come up with some other things that you might like doing, and you might say, well, instead of imagining this outcome for the future, we can actually do more things because look, you haven't paid your bills last month. That means you have to work. So let's get those bills paid and let's find them work. But the work I have now seems okay, but I'm not happy with the situation I'm on right now. What is the situation? Well, the situation is I've been stuck at this, and for like a few years, we've been trying to make this happen, tried different ways. Again, the trying itself just means like it's coming from a place of lack, coming from a place of fear. But because we've been trying, we haven't been able to accomplish this thing. We haven't been able to figure this out because of too much trying. Then the door in you might ask, how can I let go of trying? How can I simply give up of the situation? Will you be okay on your own? And I'll say, yes. Can I fully do this on my own? Am I on my own at first? I mean, really. Without the door in me, am I going to be on my own? Does that mean there won't be people outside who God can use to actually help me? Or who can actually do it for me? I do think so. I don't think I'll be on my own. But I think it would be much better to know that the door in me will be available if I need you. If I need you, I'll use you and we'll be just as one. Without worrying whether someone's gonna be there or not. Like I can trust that, or I can simply resist that to a degree and rely only on my door. A door that, again, has tried many times, has been already overwhelmed, stressed out about everything, and, right? Like, I wouldn't probably want to rely on this aspect only after it all. But I can trust in something else outside time, space, and believe in a miracle. What's that miracle? Oh, all of a sudden, it will go from raining to sunshine. Things will just start falling on my plate. Everything will make sense. I just have to be and flow with it. If I'm meant to be in Asia at the end of the month, because I need to go there to see someone, to meet a particular person who will open the door of something much bigger than anything that I've ever lived in my life, then yes, then this is the way. And it will be, except if your door is trying to sabotage the process by making you do things that has nothing to do with what you've been destined for. And a lot of the times you don't want to tell the door in you what you're destined for, because then when it knows, it's going to start doing on its own everything for you, and it's going to ruin the flow, right? We talked about that. Talked about don't let yourself know of everything. Like the details, just plan as you go. Just sit down to like write down, whatever you have to for the purpose of accomplishing a particular work assignment. But just be and do at one time, instead of in your head like, I have to do this, I have to do that. And that's how a lot of us were trained to think. Like a lot of people just don't take notes of their thoughts. Or when they hear someone say, have you wrote this down? Did you know that writing it down can help you structuring your thoughts better? And, when you see it, then you have awareness on your own, like, oh, maybe this thing doesn't quite fit here. When you're in your head, that space to notice things sometimes gets completely filled by thinking itself. The energy generated by thinking is not the same as the energy generated by awareness. The thoughts generated by awareness can be more powerful than the thoughts created by thinking. And yes, thinking can also come from awareness, but awareness comes from thinking in subtle times. When you're not thinking, all you're left with is awareness. When you're thinking, from time to time you may capture glimpses of awareness, and then you feel like, oh, yeah, I just had an insight. Or I just had an aha moment. That's what the thinkers will say. When awareness is doing and thinking, they say, I just had a thought. Let me go back to what I was. And right now I might be mixing it all. And you can use even this talk for exercise. If you think nothing I'm saying is relevant to you, maybe if you're just so advanced in this matter, in this topic, you can sort of like tell for yourself when is that I'm using thinking versus awareness itself. Now, what are you left with? So what did you come up in agreement with the door in you? If that's also what you were doing in this exercise. Like if you were questioning the aspect of you, like, okay, how can I apply you more often so you're free from thinking and can feel more present and embody in the process? Then you might hear yourself come up with some of your lost dreams. Like, after all, I still enjoy being a computer, talking to people about things I like, right? Like all of you want a job where you can actually be fully interested in the field you're working with, and you can talk about this thing and you feel good about it because people feel it. I've tried jobs in the past where I was not really interested on the subject of that thing, and really people could tell when I was talking about something that I had no clue about it. And even in sales, right? Like when I started doing sales on fashion, shoes in the beginning of my 20s, oh my gosh, this dog just showed up here. Wow. It was like all of a sudden, holy fucking crap. I'm not gonna cut this part. Okay. So, when I started working for this retail company and I used to sell shoes during my training, I was extremely excited about that, right? I had to learn the types of shoes, the models, the story of the brand, and I would always talk about it. People would buy because they just loved feeling my energy. They were just so immersed in the emotional itself that they had no time to think of the thing, and they would just do it. At that time, I had no clue about awareness, about God, about any of that. And also, that was out of my way because I didn't have to control or observe or think too much about anything, but I was just fully immersed in the moment. And also, I had a vision of arriving at a place, and I would just take every day as today is the day God is giving me the opportunity to create this future. And I arrived at that place later on, and it was because of this job. I'll never forget it. It's one of my first jobs in my life that led me to arrive at the place I've wanted to live in my. It was like, my very first big dream being accomplished, moving to America. It turned out moving to America was not the greatest thing for me because I wasn't aware again of my feelings, of my true nature, of God. So instead of coming here to America to actually, build the future that I had envisioned for myself of like abundance, of success, of accumulating material goods, etc., I ended up falling into a deep spiritual journey that led me to questioning and realizing things and experiences where my traumas were triggered until I realized such a thing as trauma, because for a long time I didn't even know why I was reacting so much, and I thought reacting was just, my way of being. It was part of my true nature. It is part of my nature, but not part of my true nature. That was when I had to find ways to cope with my existence and being able to be on my own, because at that time I was always surrounded by friends, by activities, by things. And then later on, I got addicted to just being on my own because I felt like the only way was like dealing with it on my own in order to control all the different aspects of me that would arise and be triggered at every single moment. As a highly sensitive person, speaking out from this aspect of me, it was never easy to feel, see, and think about everything at once in one time. When some people would just function from the conscious mind and not really be tuned of what was happening behind the scenes, I always felt like I had everything quite open in myself. That creative flow. They call creative flow. It's just your authentic flow. Like they call it creativity. I call it reality. Maybe creativity is what we think is reality. It's how we end up like molding and shaping things and making it look like, and that way, instead of embracing all the freaking weirdness and uniqueness aspects of existence itself. So America allowed me to overcome my fears, different kinds of fears, because yes, not knowing where to sleep the next day, not knowing where to go, how I would pay the bills, having like $1 left in my bank account, and having no way of like, how am I going to find money, and just relying on a power outside me helped increasing my confidence, but also left a lot of stress on me from all the different moments where worry would just consume me and the fear would come up, and I would work through that, and just like the process itself to build faith could be quite exhausting too when you're going through these challenges and trials in life. But at the end, I'm here, right? I made it. I made it not in the way you're thinking I made it. I didn't make millions of dollars. I didn't make the person I don't feel like I'm made yet in a degree of like I am the person I envisioned to become, but I made it all the way here. I'm trying to open something to drink right now, but and that is enough to essentially keep going and proceed with whatever I choose to in the years to come. Now, I'm still looking for the right questions. Hoping for the right answers. Which can then help me make decisions when I'm in the position of the maker. Parallel to rendering my actions, my thinking, my doing to the will of the Father. Who I'm still getting familiar to it. I didn't have a father growing up, so it's hard for me to accept that I have a father when I don't have the name of my father on the back of my ID or on my birth certificate. But everybody talks about father, and when I kind of feel like that father presence, I crave it because it's familiar and unfamiliar. It's familiar, the feeling of not having its presence, to a point when I feel its presence, it's exhilarating. So it's kind of weird to think of like, what would my father want for me right now? How would he be? How would I make him happy? How would he think he would make me happy? Because like when I think of my father, it's like I'm not thinking of the son, of the God, of the father that they tell us that we have, right? God. I think of my earthly father, who I was not quite close to. I was never close enough to him. Our relationship was very artificial. So maybe my relationship with the father is the reality, and he, in my relationship with my earthly father, is just a projection of that relationship I have with the real father. And I'm still working through, my relationship with my father. And be able to trust him here is not easy. So even though I'm full of content and ideas and perspectives about spirituality, about God, I must admit that the reason why I have all these ideas and so forth is because I don't feel a lot of the times like I have a father. I know he's there, but it just gets uncomfortable sometimes to question and to, make myself believe he has my good. He has the best for me always. He has always my best, no matter what. Yes, Father, I want to believe that you have my back. Yes, Father, I want to believe you love me. Yes, Father, I want to believe you love me exactly as I am, and you're not expecting anything from me anytime, at any moment. But yeah, you like to be proud. Yet you want to see me succeeding. You want to make sure I'm always doing. Because when I'm doing more, you are in motion, right? Energy in motion. The energy wants to move. It doesn't want to be stuck in. That's why a lot of you feel unease, because you realize how much potential is there waiting to be unlocked. So all this potential just like wants to, how? How can you express your potential more often than before? By doing the same thing over and over on a daily basis, something you've done for your whole life, something you realize there's nothing else other than what you have achieved here. Or something that you've always wanted to do and you realize that you can improve and make it better and better and polish and yes, that's the thing I'm talking about. That's exactly it, Dora. So getting back to the question asked at the beginning of this talk, then you have to question your door, the door in you. Hey, how can I make you show up more? By using the energy of doing towards something you know will bring you closer to the thing you've always wanted to do in your life. By improving, getting better, polishing every day, embracing the struggle that comes with getting better at this thing instead of settling for the struggle that you are going through for doing that which you were not called to do, but just for the sake of coping with in this lifetime or in this present moment. So I'm going to leave with this because I think I've given enough thoughts, and shared enough thoughts to you when it comes to making decisions, when it comes to integrating being and doing in one place to bring your full self to life. Thank you.